Cable television, are we ready?
Yes, we are.
Excellent. You're not the same voice as the last hearing. All right, we will start. I'm calling to order this hearing. This is a public hearing of the Committee of the Whole of the Council of the District of Columbia. I'm Phil Mendelson, Chairman of the Council and Chair of the Committee of the Whole. Today is Wednesday, October 12th, 2022. The time is 2:40 in the afternoon. And this hearing is on proposed resolution 24-932, entitled Executive Director of the Office of Advisory Neighborhood Commissions, Kent-based Appointment Resolution of 2022. This resolution was introduced by me on September 19th, 2022. The stated purpose of the resolution is for the council to appoint Mr. Kent Boese as the Executive Director of the Office of Advisory Neighborhood Commissions. The appointment would be on an at-will basis. The Office of Advisory Neighborhood Commissions, OANC, provides technical, administrative, and financial reporting assistance to the Advisory Neighborhood Commissions. And the purpose of this hearing is to receive testimony from public witnesses as to the fitness of Mr. Boese to lead the Office of Advisory Neighborhood Commissions. The record in this matter will be open through 5 p.m. on October 24th, 2022. The council scheduled to take this up on November 1st. So anyone who wishes to comment, any ANC who wishes to comment, we would have until our November 1st meeting. We have to file a record, so we have a date when we close the record. And as I said, that will be 5 p.m. on October 24th. But being a legislative branch, folks can continue to comment after that. And we wanted to be sure that ANCs had at least 30 days from when the resolution was introduced in mid-September to comment if they wish. The Office of Advisory Neighborhood Commissions in the scheme of the home rule government is relatively new, and it does serve an important role in being technical assistance to the Advisory Neighborhood Commissions. So I think I'll leave it at that, other than to add that I did work closely with Councilmember Robert White, who is here, with regard to the vacancy, and Councilmember White did a lot of work in terms of soliciting people who might be interested in the appointment. I will also just put on the record that any delay with regard to acting on this was mine. And I want to thank Councilmember White for his work and assistance in this matter. With that said, let me turn to Councilmember White just in case he has an opening statement he wants to make, and then I will invite the witnesses in.
Thank you very much, Chairman. I do have a brief statement, but first want to really thank you for holding this very important hearing as we move toward the appointment of a new permanent executive director of the Office of the Advisory Neighborhood Commissions, or OANC. As you know, my committee has been supporting a once-in-a-generation transformation of the OANC for several years now. That transformation has included dramatic new funding for our ANCs, including funding for new hybrid meeting technology, language translation, sign language interpretation, community engagement technology, economic development, negotiation, assistance, joint printing and technology services, and implicit bias and conflict resolution training. We also have funded 5 new staff and a new strategic plan for the OANC over the last several years, and significantly increased allocations that flow directly to the ANCs themselves. Most recently, Mr. Chairman, your team also worked with my office to ensure that newly established ANCs will have the financial resources they need to get up and running next year. And I want to thank you for working on that. Today, we are talking about the next stage of the OANC's transformation, a new permanent executive director of the office. After many years of leadership by Gottlieb Simon and the very able support of Shanette Grant through a transition period for the office, it is now time for us to select a new permanent director. This hasn't been a rushed process. My committee held a hearing late last year where we heard from commissioners about what they wanted to see in the next executive director of the OANC. This spring, we had a second hearing on what commissioners wanted to see in the future of the office. My committee accepted numerous exceptional applications for the role of director, and I had the privilege of interviewing a number of those candidates and making recommendations. It is critical that we pick the right leader for the OANC, a visionary thinker who will prioritize supporting our ANCs, engaging the staff of the OANC, and supporting the continued growth of the office. Despite the strong competition, Kent Boese stood out among these applicants, giving his experience and leadership at ANC 1A, as well as his management experience in the private sector at Wiley Rain and Greenberg Troig. While you ultimately made this nomination, I want to thank you, Mr. Chairman, for continuing to engage me and my committee in this work. Though I can't be here for the entire hearing due to a prior commitment, I do look forward to hearing from our commissioners and reviewing the record of today's hearing. The support of commissioners will be critical to the success of the new director of the OANC. Again, Chairman, thank you very much.
Thank you, Councilmember White. Let me call the witnesses in. I think I'll call them all in at once, except for the nominee. He will be last. So Robert Vincent Branham, who's a commissioner with ANC 5E08, Zachary Israel, who's a commissioner with ANC 4D04, John Guggenmos, who's a commissioner with ANC 2F02, Chuck Elkins, who's a commissioner with ANC 3D01, James Shabazz, who's chairman of the Organized Vendors for Economic Cooperation, and he listed himself as an advisory neighborhood commissioner emeritus. Reginald Black, who's a candidate for ANC 4E01, Michael Ray, who is chair of ANC 1A, Jeremiah Montague, who is a commissioner with ANC 5C07, Gordon Chafin, Robert Becker, who's with the DC Open Government Coalition, Alan Gambrell, Rashida Brown, who's a commissioner with ANC 1A. The hearing notice indicated 4 minutes. I'll stand by that. I hope you all will stand by that as well. If you are in gallery view, you should see a clock, I believe, in the top row of your gallery. So please be mindful of the time. Mr. Branham, you are first up, and good afternoon.
Good afternoon, Mr. Chairman. Greetings and salutations to all. I am Robert Vincent Branham, Commissioner 5E08. I am pleased to offer testimony on the nomination of Mr. Kent Boese to serve as Executive Director of the Office of Advisory Neighborhood Commissions. I want to commend Councilmember White for his role in moving this nomination of this activity along. While I do not oppose Mr. Boese's nomination for this position, I do have two specific concerns I hope the committee will pose to the nominee. If confirmed, what will Mr. Boese propose to enhance not only OCTO's technical assistance with greater guidance toward ANC transparency and openness, but also ANC adherence to FOIA requests and commissioners, but also protections to commissioners who may be district government employees? Presently, heightened awareness has been given to the need for greater technical support to commissions. However, lost in the discussion is the disrespect, disdain, and dishonor placed on commissions and commissioners, particularly commissioners employed by the district government during their sworn elected duty. Under current district rules, commissioners who are district government employees may request administrative leave to perform commissioner functions, and it shall be approved. However, there are district government managers, general counsels, and directors who seek not to comply. Moreover, they seek to assert jurisdiction over commissioners' official duties. In essence, in their view, commissioners should not attend a government function outside his or her ward, ANC, SMD. In the view of certain district officials, commissioners should only testify before the council on matters which only align with official district government views and positions. Other interactions with federal officials seemingly must receive prior approval. It is my expectation, if confirmed, Mr. Boese hopefully will upgrade and improve the OANC and OCTO's technical support to commissions and commissioners. It is also my expectation and hope the OANC will provide greater support to commissioners who are district government employees from government retaliation, and that this council will provide them greater legislative oversight protections from threats, intimidations, and other harassments. The Home Rule Act states commissioners' views are to be accorded great weight. Commissioners are elected by district voters, just as are the mayor, members of the council, and the DC Attorney General. However, they serve without pay. Commissioners display a great community service commitment on behalf of their communities. Commissioners are warriors and soldiers. Mr. Chairman and members of the council, commissioners deserve to be given great respect. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Branham. I'm at a little bit of a disadvantage in asking the nominee your question since I don't have a copy of your statement. Can you make sure to forward that to us?
I will, sir.
Thank you. Zachary Israel.
Chairman Mendelson, members of the committee, thank you for holding this critically important nomination hearing today. My name is Zach Israel, and I represent SMD 4004, which includes parts of Petworth and Brightwood Park in Ward 4. While I've never met Commissioner Boese nor worked with him as a fellow commissioner, I have heard from numerous other commissioners who have attested to his character and commitment to bettering the institution of ANCs and supporting all commissioners district-wide. I do support his nomination to serve as executive director of OANC, and I urge the council to approve his nomination resolution as quickly as possible so that he can get started on the important work of supporting our 345 soon-to-be elected commissioners and 46 separate commissions, 6 of which will be brand new prior to January 2nd, 2023. His nearly 12 years of public service as a commissioner on ANC 1A will serve him very well in this role. The main reason I'm testifying today is because I believe the district government, through the OANC, must do significantly more to help individual commissioners and commissions achieve their mission more fully. Simply put, the status quo is not working. Evidence of this is the fact that 50% of the district's nearly 300 incumbent commissioners decided not to run for re-election in 2022, myself included. The new executive director of the OANC and the DC Council need to ask the fundamental question of why this is the case. I agree with the priorities for the OANC outlined by Commissioner Boese in his responses to the committee's questions. Notably, as the current treasurer of ANC 4D, only one of 40 individuals in the whole city that serve in that role, I can attest to the fact that the requirements of that particular role, as required by the DC Code, is extremely time intensive. My hope is that Commissioner Boese would support the elimination of the role of treasurer and transfer those duties to OANC, which could better streamline the process and free up time for commissioners and commissions to better focus their time and energy on actually serving their constituents. I would also like to see Commissioner Boese make a commitment to provide additional support services to newly elected commissions that have no incumbent commissioner serving on them beginning in January 2023. The commission I serve on, ANC 4D, fits this profile since none of the 6 incumbent commissioners are running for re-election. The 8 newly elected commissioners will need additional help from the OANC since there will be a complete lack of any institutional knowledge of how ANC 4D has operated in the past or how commissions operate in general. Lastly, I'd like to urge Commissioner Boese, once confirmed, to also prioritize making conditions better for commissioners who have young children like myself. As the father of 2 sons, ages 2.5 years and 4 months, I can attest to how difficult it can be to juggle my family responsibilities and volunteer ANC responsibilities, especially during public meetings, which take place during weekday evening hours. The enacted ANC Omnibus Amendment Act of 2016 explicitly allows commissioners to be reimbursed by OANC up to $500 annually for qualifying childcare expenses as long as those services comply with all licensing requirements of the Office of the State Superintendent of Education, end quote. This OSCE-related restriction basically makes this childcare reimbursement provision null and void, since nearly all OSCE-regulated childcare facilities, as parents know, are not open during weekday evening hours when the monthly ANC public meetings actually take place. In fact, it's very likely that not a single commissioner has been reimbursed for childcare expenses over the more than 5 years this provision has been in effect. This is one example of how we need the actual current law regarding ANCs to change, in this case, to allow for childcare services to also include babysitting at a commissioner's home in order to make conditions better for commissioners. We need an executive director who's willing to go to the council and advocate needed statutory changes to ensure that all DC residents, including parents who have young children, are able to serve as commissioners without spending any money out of pocket. I urge Commissioner Boese to push back when needed and ask the council for any and all financial and technical resources to ensure that the OANC is able to serve all commissioners well. I hope that the council is willing to take his input and provide the funds needed to make conditions better, both for the OANC and all commissions and commissioners. Thank you, and I'd be happy to answer your questions.
Thank you, Commissioner. John Guggenmos. Here. I do not see him. Chuck Elkins.
Good afternoon, Mr. Chairman. As you may or may not know, I am the chairman of ACTOS, which is the Advisory Committee to OANC for Services. And it's an ad hoc committee of 17 volunteer members, 16 ANC commissioners, 2 from each ward, and 1 at-large member. Our committee focuses on helping OANC provide the best possible support to ANCs with the goal of helping ANCs be very successful. So on November 8th of this year, less than a month away, 345 commissioner positions will be on the ballot. Many commissioners will be seeking to return for another term, but as you just heard, about half of those new positions will turn over. So we will have a lot of new talent ready to serve the district when they take office on January 2nd. But will they be equipped to do the job we expect them to do? Now, some might say, well, all that commissioners do is go to a monthly meeting, so what's so hard about that? Well, most of us here know better. We know that commissioners from day one are expected to respond to requests for comment and advice from district agencies about issues affecting their community. Secondly, they are to identify and resolve local problems, working with district agencies, the council, and the community. Thirdly, to help individual constituents and institutions navigate the complex web of the district government. And fourthly, to disseminate information their constituents need from and about the district government. And I could keep going. That's just the start of their duties. So what do both new and returning commissioners need by way of support in order to do a good job in their positions? What do they need so that they do not feel helpless when confronted by a large development proposed in their neighborhood, or a dangerous street corner, or a rundown vacant building, or inadequate police response? Well, our ACTOS committee asked the current commissioners this question, and I've attached their responses to my written testimony. Let me summarize what they told us. First of all, they need continuous education. They need training and information, not just about how to run their meetings. They get that from OANC now, but also about the policies, programs, rules, and procedures of each of these key agencies that they deal with: zoning, transportation, building permits, public space, public safety, schools, etc. They need improved interactions with the individual agencies. These relationships are not optimal now, and OANC could help and should help to improve them. These commissioners need collaboration with other commissioners district-wide. Commissioners benefit from sharing perspectives and ideas with other ANCs facing similar problems. And finally, commissioners need help in actually running their commissions. Many commissioners find themselves spending a lot of extra time on administrative tasks when their time would be better used in working on issues. OANC can help streamline and centralize these administrative tasks. So I'm happy to say that the Committee on Government Operations and Facilities recognize that OANC is such a small office, and therefore that ANCs were getting only half a loaf in terms of support. Therefore, for this fiscal year, the council increased the OANC staff from 5.5 FTEs to 9.5, with an emphasis on giving ANCs the other half of the loaf as far as the support functions I've just described. Now we need an executive director for OANC who has the same vision. And I personally believe that Ken Boese has this vision and the professional capability to lead OANC into this new era of support. I ask that you confirm him and let him get to work fixing an important part of our democratic system here in the district. And then I ask that you support him when he comes to you for help. The job is just too big for him to do alone, but if all of us, the council and commissioners alike, give him a hand, he and ONC can be a big success. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Commissioner Elkins. James Shabazz. We think he may be in what we call the waiting room, and he has to click a button to promote himself to the witness room or participant room. And until he does that, let's move to the next. Reginald Black, who I believe is not here. Michael Ray. Mr. Ray, why don't you proceed, and then we'll go back to Mr. Shabazz.
Sure. Good afternoon, Chairman, and any council members that may be listening in. My name is Michael Ray, and I am the chair of ANC 1A. The testimony I'm going to give is called from all of the commissioners on 1A, except, of course, the nominee. And we will be reviewing it this evening to be approved as the official testimony of 1A. As you consider the future of the Office of the Advisory Neighborhood Commissions, ANC 1A would like to take this opportunity to offer our full support for Kent Boese as the next executive director. We are confident that you will find him to be a highly qualified candidate possessing all of the skills and temperament needed for this challenging role. A few of the reasons that we feel Kent Boese will make an excellent executive director include his 12 years as an ANC commissioner, many of these years serving as an executive committee member, both as a secretary and as a chair of the commission. His willingness to mentor new commissioners within his commission, as well as with commissioners around the city. Mr. Boese has participated in several training sessions and panels where ANCs can discuss issues and challenges and learn from one another. His demonstrated ability to build relationships with other DC agencies. The success of the commission is often rests with their ability to work with key agencies and boards like DDOT, BZA, ABRA, and DPW. Mr. Boese has built a network of individuals who can be called upon when issues arise within these bodies to help answer questions or concerns and to work with commissioners one-on-one. Finally, he is a well-recognized leader within DC government who has been asked to serve on prominent committees. Mr. Boese most recently served as the council's committee on police reform. He is on the advisory committee to the mayor's office of LGBTQ affairs. He has served as on the Ward 1 redistricting committee. And he is in these positions has illustrated his dedication and demonstrates his willingness to put in the effort to ensure that DC government is responsive and accountable. As we look forward to a better future for the Office of the ANC with Director Boese leading the way, there are some areas of centralized support that can better assist all of the ANCs across the city. We hope that these will be near and midterm goals for the director and for the council. We would recommend standardized website development and hosting. Currently, ANCs develop and host different websites with a mix of information, and some host no websites at all. Online hybrid meeting technologies. Zoom and WebEx have been a lifeline during the past 2 years. Not all ANCs have access or understand the types of these accounts that are available and how all of those different accounts work functionally. Hybrid meetings are also going to pose a very interesting problem for a lot of commissions, both in terms of the physical technologies that are necessary and also the internet and logistical support that would be necessary to make those things happen. A need for a centralized meeting notice register. The notice requirements for the ANC Act should be updated to include a requirement for a DC register of sorts for all of the ANCs. This central repository would become a go-to for all residents wanting to learn more about the activities of the ANC across the city, all in one location, so that you're not looking to different websites or different posting places that all of the ANCs may choose to use. And then finally, as others have kind of mentioned, a need for new commissioner training for midterm replacements and ongoing education. Many of our newest commissioners do not have the opportunity to receive the types of training that those who are elected in November and then seated in January. So midterm replacement meetings are absolute requirement. But then there's also a need for ongoing education with regular online or in-person trainings, and then a repository online for commissioners that can then access those things as they are necessary. We look forward to working with Director Boese, the Office of the ANC, and the Council to help make these improvements in the future. And I thank you for your time this afternoon.
Thank you, Commissioner. I do not have a copy of your statement. I think you said, though, you were going to give it to the ANC for them
Tonight, and I will submit it first thing tomorrow morning.
You're assuming that the ANC will approve it.
I am very confident that the ANC shall.
Thank you. Jeremiah, excuse me, where was I? Mr. Shabazz, James Shabazz. Mr. Shabazz, you're muted. If you could unmute yourself.
Can you hear me now?
Yes, I can.
All right. Good afternoon, all. I am James Shabazz, former ANC Commissioner, and I'm here to reflect some testimony from various aspects of the community. We oppose any arbitrary appointments by the DC Mayor or DC Council to replace Gottlieb Simon with Mr. Kent Boese as Director of Advisory Neighborhood Commission Affairs. We believe that the Mayor and City Council should organize a plebiscite of current and former ANCs who, from a 40-year historical perspective, are best qualified to select a new director of the Office of ANC Affairs. We wish to see some sincerity on the DC government's rhetoric on racial equity in this selection process. The selection of Mr. Kent Boese does not reflect the government's racial rhetoric on equity, equity on racial rhetoric. Finally, we oppose Mr. Boese's appointment due to his role in the dismantling of the New Communities Initiative development project in his neighborhood that was planned to provide affordable housing for those being gentrified from the Park Morton public housing complex. It seems that dog parks and flower gardens were more important than affordable housing for his Black neighbors. The advisory neighborhood commissions are weak and ineffective in many parts of this city. An administrative director is needed to help restore the grassroots political power and influence that existed on the part of the ANCs that existed in this city until the failed leadership of Gottlieb Simon emerged. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Shabazz. And I don't have a copy of your statement, if you could provide that.
You'll get it.
Thank you. Is Jeremiah Montague here? Yes, Commissioner.
Yes, sir. Council Chair Mendelson, council members, staff, constituents, and attendees. Thank you for this opportunity to offer my support as an ANC Commissioner for the PR 23-932 Executive Director of the Office of Advisory Neighborhood Commissions Kent Boese Appointment Resolution of 2022. I am Commissioner Jeremiah Montague Jr., serving ANC Single Member District 5C07, which includes West Woodridge, Langdon, Old Sherwood, and a small portion of Brentwood East. It has taken a considerable period, some believe much too long, to reach this wonderful occasion. Before the council is the welcome nomination of Mr. Kent Boese for the position of Executive Director of the Office of Advisory Neighborhood Commissions, OANC. We are about to dissipate the persistent cloud of uncertainty for ANCs with what I hope Mr. Boese brings. I expect that he will engender a robust, responsive, advocative, and proactive OANC. My personal and professional knowledge of Mr. Boese confirms that he is most suited to shepherd the organization vigorously towards the ONC that ANC commissioners sorely want. The statement is not to take away from the past year's work of Ms. Grant, interim director, or the OANC staff. However, the new supplementations and staff expansions will prove welcome resources placed under Mr. Boese's leadership. I expect that there will be challenges, some known and others unanticipated. That is to be expected. Nevertheless, I am concerned of the potential headwinds that may lie ahead for him as director. Not everyone will be open to change or embrace alterations to the status quo. Regardless, with urgency, he understands that we must move forward because there is much to do. This is especially necessary given the results of the recent redistricting of ANCs. Certainly, the staff will have to do more. Mr. Boese has shown that he can and must inspire the OANC to actively deriving and implementing purposeful best practices, all the while bringing the most responsive solutions to the challenges they present. Further, there must be a dissolution of accommodation of the ill effects of disenchantment and innuendo. We believe we have no time or place for any accommodations of such. I suggest that Mr. Boese will be a service-based, fact-grounded public servant in executing his duties and managing the office's staff and resources. My experiences with this nominee is that he will skillfully turn headwinds into tailwinds with expert deliberateness, diplomacy, and panache. I hope that he will bring a fresh air and needed new perspectives, having been an active ANC commissioner for many years. I believe that to do a great job, you have to fully embrace the opportunities, giving credence to the existing practices, but tenaciously, skillfully transforming the vision and organization into the brightest shining star, enlivening ANCs across the wonderful city with an unflinching advocacy. Mr. Boese is the right person at the right time for this appointment, which I fully support and enlist others to do so. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner. Gordon Chafin.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I am here to very much support Kent Boese's appointment as director of OANC. I worked with Kent in his capacity as a leader of then the Gertrude Stein Democrats and now the Stonewall Democrats here in DC. He reached out to me early in the pandemic to help create an accessible public forum for the candidates in the 2020 election, which of course became 2022. And here we're going into 2023 and still virtual or hybrid meetings are important. I ask that all of you guys on the council confirm him as soon as possible so that he can get working on the necessary transition steps for several new ANC commissions that will start, and we'll have to start from scratch. My concerns for your edification, Mr. Chairman, and for Kent's new, hopefully, department is the greater support for the performance of virtual or hybrid meetings. The current support system has been a patchwork process where there might be funding available, there might be a 2-page PDF with resources that you can look through, but there hasn't been centralized support where there's perhaps options that commissions can pick from. I have contracted to provide AV services for the last 3 years with ANC 1C, and that started before the pandemic, and I'm ending that service today, actually. And my observation from that 3-year process has been that the commissioners themselves need to focus on the substance of the meeting, and the OANC needs to provide a foolproof, and no insult by that term, but a foolproof solution, whether an ANC chooses to stay virtual or go hybrid. And how, as Commissioner Ray was saying, there's the way that the meetings have to run procedurally can be more complicated. The actual technology is more complicated. And so I hope that Kent in his new role will pursue a simplification and expansion of those resources. In regards to contracting for services, I was a contracted employee with ANC 1C and that was extraordinarily complicated. And so I hope that the new OANC will pursue a perhaps a draft contract, something, a very simple solution if specific ANCs want to pursue services for executive administration, staff administration, however that works. My last comment is in regards to records preservation. Something that I found in my service with ANC 1C and in previous roles as a journalist covering ANCs is that there has been no centralized preservation of records. Not only the presentation of it on a website, which could be subject of another long testimony itself, but public records keeping, so that when new commissioners start, they are able to not start from scratch, and so that there is a robust public record. And Commissioner Ray's suggestion of a register is I like very much, because that could feed into calendars and do sorts of other automated publication that would really improve the situation. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chafin. And I don't have a copy of your statement. If you could provide that,
Yes, sir.
please. Robert Becker?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. On behalf of the DC Open Government Coalition, thank you for the opportunity to address the appointment of an executive director for the OANC. I am a resident of Ward 4, served by ANC 34G, and a member of the coalition's board. Since the coalition's founding in 2009, we have helped ANC commissioners with Freedom of Information Act requests. Commissioners have supported some of the initiatives we have been involved in to increase government transparency. And across the city, many ANCs have greatly increased public access to their meetings and records. But under Gottlieb Simon's leadership, the OANC steadfastly refused to engage with us to make ANCs more accessible to district residents. And many ANCs make little effort at public engagement or transparency. For decades, Mr. Simon sought to exclude ANCs from the FOI Act and Open Meetings Act. He provided no help to ANCs that wanted to make documents available online or live stream meetings, and no guidance regarding records management and security. As a result, the 46 ANCs and 445 commissioners who will serve the city next year have been left to their own devices, literally and figuratively, to keep track of their public government records, and commissioners have used their personal computers, cell phones, messaging apps, cloud storage accounts, and commercial internet service providers. They have government email addresses, but we know that at least some commissioners use personal email accounts to conduct government businesses. We hope Kent Boese, as the OANC's new leader, will begin a long overdue process of bringing ANCs into the digital age, implementing systems to manage, secure, and retrieve records and data, as well as platforms to facilitate engagement with constituents. The council and executive agencies began this process nearly 2 decades ago. So the OANC has a lot of catching up to do. In 2020, the council created the Technology Support Fund administered by the OANC for planning, development, or procurement of a mobile or computer application to assist commissioners with outreach and engagement with their constituents, to supplement existing funding for communications access services, and to provide remote meeting, audio, visual, printing, and website services for ANCs. But OANC staff testified last spring, 2 years into the pandemic, that several ANCs still lack the technologies the fund is supposed to provide, and the OANC had dispersed none of the funds to help them. For example, no ANC in Ward 8 has a website, and many ANCs have only rudimentary sites. Considering how far behind the OANC is regarding records management and transparency, the Technology Support Fund is a drop in the bucket. ANCs are public bodies of the district government made up of commissioners elected by DC residents to represent their neighborhoods. Like the council and executive agencies, They are obligated to retain, preserve, secure, and disseminate public records in compliance with the FOI Act and the ANC enabling statute. And they are subject to DC Code provisions regarding preservation of records, but they lack even rudimentary systems for doing that. In hearings last spring before the Committee on Government Operations, several ANC's commissioners and those who spoke today agreed with this assessment. One said he had difficulty addressing long-running neighborhood issues because his predecessor took important documents with them when they left office. To protect the integrity of ANC information, facilitate compliance with the FOI Act, ensure public access to meetings, the OANC needs to establish a common platform to host all ANC websites, establish common electronic records management systems, acquire audiovisual equipment for ANCs to live stream meetings, formulate policies and record management procedures, and train people, the commissioners and their support staff, to use those systems. Mr. Boese will need more staff and financial resources. It is likely that he will need additional authority in the ANC enabling statute as well. We sincerely hope the council will provide those resources. And we hope that Mr. Boese will address these issues in his remarks today. And I would comment that Mr. Boese spent some time with us last week, and I greatly appreciate that. We look forward to working with the relevant council committees and the OANC to formulate plan to modernize ANC operations. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Becker. Alan Gambrell? I believe he's not here. Rashida Brown, Commissioner Brown? Not here. I believe she's not here. I'm told Reginald Black has joined us. Mr. Black?
Hello, can you hear me?
So I can't see you, but I can hear you.
All righty. Hello, my name is Reginald Black, and I am a candidate for Advisory Neighborhood Commission 4E01. And I'm here to support the sentiments put forth by Commissioner Emeritus Shabazz, in which there is a rich history that the Advisory Neighborhood Commissioners should be pulling on to select who is going to be their administrative and financial technical assistants. It's, duly noted that the Park Morton New Communities Development in large part was not supported by the appointee, Mr. Kent Boese, who holds the idea that communities are separate. Advisory Neighborhood Commissioners are not separate from their communities. And these commissioners, we are the link between all of the factors, the government, the sector, the neighbors, the community, the schools. And so for someone to have a view that communities are separate, that no one will ever come together in itself is a travesty, because we need unity. And these residents are African American, they're Black folks. So he believes that he can't be a community with Black people. This is not what you want as assistance for the grassroots level of DC government. You want somebody who is community oriented, who reflects the community, who is going to be able to assist all communities, including those in Ward 7 and 8. These commissions need help, and they don't need a separation, as put forth several times by Mr. Boese. This is not what we want to see, and the Park Morton residents should have been given 33% ownership, matter of fact, complete ownership of that public housing complex, so that they can secure their futures, generate wealth, and continue to stabilize their families. This separate community idea is what has gentrified and displaced those residents, and that's inequitable. If we want to show that we're quote unquote not racist, then they should have owned that particular parcel of land. We are a community together. There isn't any separate, there isn't any, we're never going to come together sentiments in community. So we want to make sure that the director of the Office of Advisory Neighborhood Commissioners is somebody who accurately reflects the community and will be able to work with all of the commissioners and make sure that all communities have the resources and strength that they need to make sure their communities are safe and strong and stable.
That concludes your testimony, Mr. Black.
Yes.
Thank you. I don't have a copy of your statement. If you could provide that, please.
Yes, it will be provided.
Thank you. Give me just a moment. I want to thank each of you for your testimony. I just have a few questions. All of your testimony is helpful. And those of you who did not have a written statement, if please provide it. Mr. Branham, and I did get a copy of your statement, Mr. Branham. You said you have two specific concerns, and the first had to do with Octo's technical assistance, but it wasn't clear to me your second concern. Mr. Branham? Robert Branham, can you hear me? I can't hear you.
Yes, I can hear you.
Okay. In your testimony, you expressed two concerns. The first had to do with Octo's technical assistance. I was not clear to me what your second concern is.
The second concern is the respect that commissioners deserve when they do their duties. You know, there are some persons who feel that if you are a commissioner in, let's say, Ward 1, you have no business going to government functions or official actions that may occur in Ward 5, in Ward 6, that you somehow or another must remain within your backyard, even though that particular government activity serves all the residents of the District of Columbia. It's just placed in that particular ward doesn't mean that somehow or another other commissioners, other council members are restricted from being a part of and attending those official government functions. And I think the OANC needs to put out a primer, not so much a primer, but an advisory on what district government employees can expect if they serve as a commissioner, and what they can and cannot do, what the ethics rules are, what the parameters are, you know, but commissioners do have the right to, if they're government employees, to request administrative leave to do their duties. And the rule says that it shall be approved. But there are some persons who feel that they need to get prior approval, prior consent. They can't go there, they can't go here, even though they're elected officials. And if they testify,
I think you just froze. This is one of the qualities of a virtual hearing and Zoom platform. We like Zoom, so it's not about Zoom, but the fact that it's virtual is that sometimes people freeze. I'm going to move on. Commissioner Israel, this has not so much to do with your testimony, but you said that everyone on your ANC chose not to run for re-election. Why?
That's a great question. I think there's certainly various reasons for it. 2 of the 6 commissioners had served more than one term, including our chairwoman, Renee Bowser, who's been a commissioner for nearly 20 years off and on. So that's understandable why after that long period she'd want to step down. But I was one of 4 current first-term commissioners on 4D that are not returning. And I know one of them, he may move, so that's one reason. But for myself and the 2 others, I think, you know, it's a multitude of factors in just terms of not feeling that we have enough time to do our commissioner role fully and effectively on top of our family life, on top of our full-time day jobs. And look, I take the role of commissioner very seriously. I like to think that I've done a good job in the role. And I set out to achieve certain things over the last 20 plus months. I think I've achieved a lot of them. But for me personally, you know, my second son was born this past May, and I was able to handle things pretty well with one young kid, but with 2 young kids and my daytime job and wanting to be the best commissioner I can be, it just wasn't very sustainable for me personally under the current conditions that we face, in part with this, you know, support or lack thereof from the OANC. And that's why I felt compelled to testify today, because I want to see conditions made better for my successor, for other commissioners who face similar circumstances, so that they don't feel compelled to pick one or the other. And perhaps one day I'll return to running for ANC again. But right now, I just have to prioritize my own family first. And my neighbor who's running to succeed me, I think she'll do a good job, but it's going to take her a while to get up to speed to be a good commissioner. And so there's a whole host of reasons, but I think burnout is a big one. Even for those that don't have young kids, it's a lot of extra work. And when you don't have that centralized support, when your reelection comes up, that's, I think, largely why so many commissioners aren't running again. And that's to the detriment of the people of the district.
Good point. Thank you for that. Commissioner Elkins, one way to read a part of your testimony, a piece of it, I thought all your testimony was helpful, but you would like to see Mr. Boese improve interactions with the individual agencies. Those relationships are not optimal now. Realistically speaking, how much can the OANC do to improve relations with agencies? Isn't this really a function of the mayor and whether she wants her agency directors to work closely with the ANCs?
Well, certainly it would help to have the support of the mayor. I don't think we've had that very much, although I can't speak for the whole district in that regard. But no, I think there's a lot of opportunity. I've talked to a number of directors about improving the relationship with the ANCs. I believe that in many, many cases, the ANC can actually be a very positive help to the director of an agency in delivering the mission. And I don't believe most directors see the ANCs that way. And I think so it's somewhat a matter of changing their attitude, partly through example. What I found in trying to improve these relationships in 2 instances was that I was speaking only for my own ANC, and which is only one now going to be one of 45, 46. And if I could have said, I can get a number of ANCs to come in here and work with you, and let's work on a cooperative basis to make your department really sing with regard to interactions at the grassroots, et cetera. I think I might have been able to deliver something there. As an individual commissioner and representing one ANC, I couldn't. So I think, yes, it would certainly help to have a lot more support from the mayor, and we can all work on that. But in the meantime, let's not just sit back and say, well, there's nothing we can do. I think there's a lot that OANC could do on behalf of all the ANCs, and I hope that Kent will do that.
Fair point. Mr. Becker, are you taking a position for, or in support of Mr. Boese?
Yes, we are, Mr. Chairman. As I said, we talked to him last week. We told him what our thoughts are, and I think what he is seeing is a lot like what we see. What we're hoping is to urge him to move quickly on these things, because for the ANCs to function, they need to be able to get access to their records. And as you heard today, many of them don't have those records because they left on somebody else's laptop when that person left office. And there's no way to get them back. So these are things that are sort of not what the ANCs do on an everyday basis, but it's certainly essential for them to do those things that they do on an everyday basis.
Thank you. Let me turn to my colleague, Councilmember Robert White, if you have any questions.
Thank you, Chairman. Actually, the two questions I had written down you asked, but I'm going to touch on them briefly. Want to start by saying thank you to all of you for testifying. A lot of you have seen over the past years as we've been working to really modernize the ANC and make it so that more people are able to serve and serve successfully. And a key portion of that, you can sort of try to build a new car, but you need somebody to drive it. And I think Kent Boese is the person who's really going to help drive us to the next chapter for ANCs. And he has a lot on his plate, a lot of challenges. But I think he's up for those challenges. The couple things that the chairman just touched on these. I was going to ask why there was so much turnover to Commissioner Israel. You answered that, and I think Kent sort of hears that concern and knows that is in front of him. But let me push. Who was I'm sorry, Chuck Elkins. Let me push you a little bit. Do you have any thoughts on how? I understand sort of what we could accomplish with more partnership, better relationship with agencies. Do you have any thoughts at this time as to how the new director could improve those relationships?
Well, let's take the Department of Transportation. I've been talking to the deputy director there about the fact that ANCs can help DDOT do a better job of interacting with constituents. I think in many cases, DDOT feels that their professional staff needs to do the interface with constituents, whether they want the parking removed to build a bike lane or whatever. I think there are a number of ANCs, and I can't speak for all of them, of course, but I think there are a number of ANCs which are willing to take on this task in conjunction with DDOT to essentially do that interface with the citizens, make the initial decision about whether this bike lane should take away the parking or not, just using that as an example, and that will take the heat from their constituents if they do in fact decide that this parking should be eliminated in order to benefit another mode. My experience so far with DDOT is their professional staff often shies away when the heat really gets hot, and they say, I don't think we're going to work on this bike lane anymore. I think we'll go someplace else. Well, that's ridiculous. The bike lane was chosen because they needed a bike lane there, and somebody needs to help them with the politics of the local community. DCRA, just one more example real quick, is most of us do not know how to read architectural design, architectural, what's the right term? The design. Mm-hmm. So we have a development coming in a neighborhood. We'd like to ask intelligent questions, but we haven't had the training to know how to read these things well enough to be able to really seek out where the contractor is cheating, if he is. There's a lot. I don't think DCRA, now the Department of Buildings, I don't think the Department of Buildings sees ANCs as an ally in helping them look for people who are cheating on DCRA matters. And they just don't have that in their program. I think ANCs can do a lot. And I think that we need to be able to speak more as a group of ANCs, because my experience, as I said, as a single ANC is, well, I'm only offering one of 46 or 40 in the past ANCs, and what good is that to the director of buildings or the director of DDOT? So I hope that Mr. Boese can gather some of us who are like-minded about working with agencies more closely and can work together and have some cooperative relationships.
I appreciate that. I think there's a real opportunity, as difficult as it is in many ways to have so many ANCs across the city not running again. If we could get the perspective of as many of them as possible to understand what it would have taken for them to continue in that service, I think that will really highlight a lot of the road ahead for the new director. I think a lot of those things are going to be the things we've heard over the past several years, which I'm hoping between the new executive director, most especially, will start to close a lot of those gaps. But the strategic plan will get us the rest of the way. We'll really have a roadmap for where they need to focus, because we need good people to want to do this, and that's becoming more of a challenge. So I want to again thank you all for testifying, for your ongoing engagement in ANC issues, and I look forward to continuing to work with you all as the Office of ANC continues to grow and modernize. So again, Chairman, thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember. I'm going to excuse all of you. I want to thank you for your time and testimony. Several of you promised that you would get us your statements, which would be very helpful. And this is a reminder as well that the record will be open till 5 p.m. on the 24th. Also, I'll use this opportunity. I think you all know as commissioners that I have a quarterly meeting with ANC commissioners, and the invitation went out, and it'd be nice to see all of you there. It's October 26th, I believe. So you all are excused. You can continue to watch the hearing through whatever the room is. I call them rooms, in the attendee room. And I'll call now the nominee, Kent Boese. Give us just a second before you start. Mr. Boese, why don't you begin, and good afternoon.
Good afternoon. It's good to see you, Chairman Mendelson. Good afternoon, Councilmember White. I look forward to working with you and addressing you today. Thank you for the opportunity to be before you today and discuss the Office of Advisory Neighborhood Commissions. I am deeply honored by the nomination to be the next executive director of the OANCs, and by the shared commitment to ensure that by working together, our advisory neighborhood commissions have the support, resources, and interagency relationships they need to be the effective voices for their neighborhoods across the district. I am equally grateful to those who signed up and testified today and shared ideas on improving OANC operations and ANC support. This feedback will be extremely valuable to the OANC as we set our priorities in the coming months. I am passionate about ANC matters, as demonstrated by my 12 years of serving as a commissioner on ANC 1A, where previously shared, I served as 2.5 years as secretary and 8.5 years as chair. In addition, I have 15 years of professional management experience within the legal community and 27 years of library experience. This experience makes me well suited to take on the challenges most critical to expanding OANC services and programs beneficial to every commission and, by extension, to every resident of the District of Columbia. First and foremost, I believe that commissioners and ANCs are the clients of OANC, and they are our primary charge. While I have ideas on where the office needs to focus to improve services, I believe that success can only come through strong and regular engagement with the council and the ANCs themselves. Being strong partners, is the foundation through which OANC will be both responsive and visionary. OANC needs to be dynamic, evolving, and creative so that both it and its support of ANCs keeps up with our changing city and the changing demands that come with it. While the first order of business must be to support and prepare our new commissions and redistricted ANCs to be fully functional on day one, the next order of business will be the development of a strategic plan. The focus of that plan will be to achieve the long-term goals for ANCs envisioned by the council and largely coalesce around 5 themes that I've included. First, centralizing administrative and technological support services. Second, building out a robust continuing education program. Third, staffing up OANC so that it can provide the professional and technical support in the areas of zoning, development, and PUD community benefits, among others. Fourth, providing expertise and best practices to improve legal compliance and records retention and access. And finally, something I've been paying attention to most closely in recent weeks, working to improve ANC soft skills such as effective communication and conflict resolution to improve ANC collegiality and professionalism between commissions, their government partners, and the council. I've provided additional insights on these themes in my pre-hearing statement, and I'm happy to discuss them in more depth today where there are additional questions. It is important to note that while the primary charge of OANC is to focus on ANC services, an equally important role for the OANC is to be ANC's advocate by working intimately with district agencies to ensure the agencies are meeting both ANC expectations and their legal requirements on actions ranging from providing notice to giving great weight and a host of issues in between. While serving these goals will not be without their challenges, I am confident that there are short-term wins. Ultimately, my desire is for the OANC to fulfill its mission to providing the support needed for ANCs so that they can in turn be the professional grassroots elected bodies they were meant to be, and to ensure that every ANC in every ward has access to both the equitable and high quality services and support they need to fully represent their communities. I thank you for this opportunity to speak before you, and I have no doubt that you both have many questions for me, and I'm happy to answer those.
Thank you, Mr. Boese. Let me start with questions that I ask of nominees at every hearing. Are you able to meet the time requirements to serve?
I am, and if it were possible to add time to every day to do it, I would.
And do you know of any potential conflicts of interest that you might have?
I do not. If a conflict of interest came up in the future, my priority would be to serve the OANC and dispense with the other obligation.
And do you have any outstanding liability for taxes, fees, or other payments to the district, federal, or other state or local governments?
I do not.
You are currently a commissioner?
I am.
And prior to my contacting you about nominating you, were you a candidate for running for re-election?
I was. I have since withdrawn that candidacy. I think it would be a conflict of interest to be a commissioner and director.
So at the point that the council appoints you, which
Office of ANC.
am thinking the council will do, you will resign your seat?
I can resign my seat, or I could let this year run out if it's determined, whichever would be better. I'm happy to resign instantly. I will say that the commission I serve in does not meet in December. So whether I'm a commissioner or not a commissioner in December, there is no meeting. But I would be happy to resign upon appointment.
All right, at the moment, I'm not asking you to, but I'm asking about that. So I have your answer. Commissioner Robert Branham brought up a couple of concerns. One was, and I assume you heard his testimony. I just wanted you to react. One concern was Octo's technical assistance. Enhance not only Octo's technical assistance with greater guidance toward transparency and openness, but also protections to commissioners who may be district government employees. He spoke of disrespect, disdain, and dishonor placed upon commissions and commissioners, particularly commissioners employed by the district government. What's your reaction in terms of how to be helpful?
Well, it would be premature for me to speak on behalf of what Octo will or won't do until I've had a conversation with Octo. I do agree that personally, I believe there's more Octo could be doing, though I understand it's not a unit that's within control of OANC. So clearly it's going to be an instance of having to work with community partners and find opportunities to improve service. I do agree that when I was listening to Commissioner Branham, one of the thoughts that came to mind, which does tie into many of the things I've been thinking about, goes into continuing education, but also providing guidance letters, determination letters, better, shall we say, better guidance on what great weight is and when the agencies must provide it and how they should do so. I think that's one of those conversations that needs to be ever present. We frequently look at service to ANCs as what are the ANCs doing wrong. I don't think that's the right paradigm. Sometimes ANCs are doing everything right, but they're not achieving what they're meant to achieve because the agencies they're working with aren't providing their half of the conversation and dialogue. So when I think of continuing education, I also believe that perhaps some of what OANC decides to step up with seminars might even be directed towards the agencies themselves. Clearly can't compel them to, unless council or others decide that they can, but there's no reason why we can't provide the expertise and background so that the agencies at least know their role in the interaction as well.
In your testimony, you mentioned centralizing administrative and technological support services. Can you speak to this in more detail?
Sure. In my professional capacity, one of the things that I've done as a librarian over the years is my specialty was in technical services or back of the house operations. You know, most people think of libraries and they think of the reference desk. I'm exactly the person you would never see going to a library because I'm back there making the machinery go so that everything works. You know, I think about the technical services, you know, from the library perspective, it's usually a library catalog and various access to databases. Similar things should be happening with ANCs. You know, depending upon what we can get stepped up with staffing and support and technical support in-house, all those are valid considerations. But logistically, there's no reason why we can't have centralized database or centralized website support so that ultimately the goal would be that web hosting would be in a centralized location, that OANC would provide the technical expertise to either instruct ANCs that want to administer their own websites or to take on that service for ANCs that don't have the technical expertise. Same should be happening with the Zoom meetings. You know, if we could have a centralized contract and just, you know, it would allow us to determine exactly how many meetings are going on at any one time. So how many seats do we need to have? All of the services would have equity across the system. But most important to me is it would also be an excellent way to have fiscal responsibility because we wouldn't have redundancy in the system. We wouldn't have contracts or district money being spent on systems that may just be sitting there if people don't have the technical expertise, and we would only be buying what we need. So I start to think about things like that. You know, where do we have inefficiencies due to our hands-off approach and letting all the ANCs kind of figure it out for themselves? Some of them are quite good, and some of them may never want to. participate in such a program, and I think that's fine. But for those that want to, we should be stepping up programs that allow them to enter into that arrangement.
Thank you. You've been an ANC commissioner for 12 years. So you've had some experience with the Office of Advisory Neighborhood Commissions over the years. I don't know.
I have.
I don't know how much experience, but how will you use that experience to inform your role as executive director?
Well, there were some things that well, I'll start by saying my interaction with the OANC, I'd say it was consistent but not frequent. Oftentimes it was seeking advice or perhaps connections with agencies that were underserving. One of the things I'd always wanted was more support with regards to website design. Definitely, I think everyone would agree that more support with regards to the financial burdens that the treasurer currently has to do. And I've talked to Ms. Grant and understand that there's some things in the works that are coming down the pike that I'm very excited about. Yeah, oftentimes sometimes the pieces we needed most from the OANC was to give us advice, perhaps a legal opinion on how to read a statute so that we could apply it to a case, to understand that we were fully understanding our role when we took up a matter. And that was usually very cryptic in its response, like, well, you could read it this way, or you could read it this way, or if the interaction was made with the Office of the Attorney General, oftentimes it's, well, that's not a pending case and you're not our primary, so we're not going to answer that question for you. So I think a lot of that needs to be demystified, and I believe one of the open positions as written would have someone with those skills that would kind of be in-house advisor in legal areas to interpret things. So that's exciting to me. But I also think one thing that OANC has never really done, though I know that there's movement to do this, is to provide some guidance with regards to planned unit developments and negotiating benefits packages. But I think that should also go a little bit further and just have some basic competency skill training for evaluating zoning cases. Zoning is something that's just kind of clicked with me in my area based on the regs. Zoning is zoning, and you can read it and it makes sense to me. It doesn't make sense to a lot of people, but maybe there's an opportunity there for OANC to provide some cursory guidance when it comes to BZA cases, like if someone has a concern, for instance, in a row house neighborhood, that maybe they don't like the upper level constructions, and they could say, is this legal? We could say, yeah, according to the zoning code, this is by right. There's nothing here that you should be concerned about. I mean, you can be concerned about it, but from a zoning perspective, it's in compliance. So maybe that's a service that could be stepped up as well.
I think I'll leave it at that. My time is up. Councilmember Robert White, you have questions?
Yes, thank you again, Mr. Boese, for putting yourself forward. Thank you for being with us today. So one of the conversations I had during the previous panel, and Chairman Mendelson engaged in this as well, is the significant turnover of commissioners over this past year. As a commissioner yourself, what are your thoughts on why it seems so many commissioners feel like they are unable or unwilling to continue their service in this role?
Well, I will say that the last two terms, or since the onset of COVID, I know that we've done a lot virtually, but it's been difficult. I mean, there is one commissioner on ANC 1A that I've still never physically met, and I feel like that becomes a stress. I'm fortunate that Commissioner Lehman Morales is running for re-election, and he does a great job in his commission area, but I've never had a chance to meet with him, to connect with him, to understand the nuances of where he is on positions. And similarly, it becomes stressful because I know that there are a lot of people in my community that I could serve better if we were meeting face to face. And the community meetings have gone away largely, block parties have gone away largely. So it is a lot of extra work trying to replicate gathering the views of diverse communities when we don't have the social structure in place anymore to allow that to happen. You know, I think there's a plethora of reasons why people may choose not to run. I do think that some of the administrative burdens that have accrued over the years, you know, they do become a burden, but I think that's what OANC is supposed to be helping with, right? Like, it's not that anything creating those admin tasks is wrong or that it's not, that it's beneficial to the communities, but OANC should be shouldering that burden, right? Like, we have the experience, anyone shouldn't have to worry about turnover at OANC, so we can start to become that institutional knowledge in those areas. But also something I've been thinking about too, because institutional knowledge is very important. We only have 2-year terms. You can have an entire commission turnover from one election to another. What I have seen through every election is, for the first 6 months after swearing in January, people start to get to know each other. They don't really know people's work style. They finally start to get into a groove by about July. We can become very highly effective and very good working companions by the time that the next election comes up. Then you have an election, and by the time you get sworn in on January, those of us reelected kind of look at each other and say, what did we just do to ourselves? We have to start all over with the relationship building again.
Yeah.
So that cycle can get tiring. But what I would love to do is, I think that it would be beneficial to have a standing advisory council of some type to OANC. Actos might be able to be a part of that discussion, but I think it would be very helpful too to have not just sitting commissioners in the advisory role. It would be very beneficial if we could have former commissioners in that advisory role so that they can continue to share their experience, even if they have chosen not to continue being a commissioner. So I think there's ways to suss that out.
So that actually runs into my next question, which, and you've largely answered this, but let me just give you an opportunity if there's more to it. How do you plan to engage commissioners or former commissioners in the strategic direction of the OANC?
Well, I think that the OANC's strategic initiative, what I would like to do is, first of all, start to map out the framework. And then before we start really fleshing it out, I definitely want to make sure that we have a series of meetings virtually, in person, talk to key stakeholders throughout the commissions to kind of make sure that we haven't left anything out of this structure, and then to start fleshing it out. So I think it's going to be a little bit of a give and take. My working style is usually, or has been, very collaborative, but at the end of the day, we know that decisions need to be made. And if people get to a point where nothing new is coming up and we need to move forward, then we will move forward and create a draft plan. And then the draft would have to go out for comment. I think that's only right. You know, I'm a firm believer that whether working in the community or working at OANC, we should be doing things for people and for our constituencies and not to them. So they have to have an opportunity to be a part of the process and to review it before it gets to final form.
Now, of course, none of this work happens without a team. So can you talk about what a management experience you have and how you plan to engage the OANC staff on day one?
Well, on day one, I think the first thing I'm going to have to do is sit down with everybody and just have them tell me what, you know, they believe they do. You know, I can look at their position descriptions. I'm clearly going to do that, but I also like to know what they're passionate about. I'd like to know what contributions they've made in the last year. You know, I always feel that sometimes we have great employees and they could be even better sometimes if we realign their skill sets to the jobs we have. And sometimes people are misaligned. I don't know if that's true with OANC staff yet, because I haven't had the opportunity to sit down with all of them, but that would definitely be where I would start. And then I would want to review the open positions and make sure that the people that we're hoping to add to OANC are aligned with, the vision and the priorities we're going to have for the next 6 to 12 months. And in that regard, I'm sure I'd be working very closely with you and very closely with Sean to make sure that what we're asking for is exactly what we need. Get some background from you all on what your vision was for those positions. And I believe, work with Commissioner Elkins and Actos, because I believe they were very instrumental in talking to you about the needs of those positions. So once I have a very clear understanding there, then I think we're going to be in good shape with, augmenting OANC with the skill sets we need. But that's where I would start.
And what management experience do you have coming in?
Well, since 2008, I've been a manager in some capacity. In 2008, I started at Greenberg Traurig, managing the technical services department. And, I don't know, we probably had, I'd say that Greenberg Traurig it was a 23 city firm at the time. So that was a lot to keep track of because some of my reports weren't in DC. And so there was a lot of virtual components to that. But after 2 years, so I'd say at least 23 people and probably more than that because of the cities. I moved over to Wiley Rhine in, 2008. And one of the reasons I did so was because it was a single office firm here in DC, which allowed me to not only do my job and manage my staff, but also gave me it allowed me to continue doing ANC work because it eliminated the travel component. So that's what made that one very desirable to me. But at Wiley, I've managed between 2 and 6 people, depending upon the workload. And it's been in a mix of back of the house technical services, library work, and research staff. And it's also got the soft part of it of working to manage expectations from attorneys who may have a research need that they forgot to tell you about. So by the time you finally get it, they want it in about 3 hours if you're lucky. So that has brought a lot of, I'd say one of the things I really love about the Wiley experience, and because it's now my department entirely, I've had a lot of experience negotiating larger contracts and service contracts. And so constantly thinking about, what's the right level of service we need to provide it to the X number of people, comply with copyright, balance the budget to make sure that, it's something that we can afford to do, look at the return on the investment, make sure it's not something that is frivolous. There always has to be a business case. But the contract part of it, I really like. So I understand that procurement is a bit of a challenge at the Wilson Building from time to time, but I'm hoping that the experience I have working with vendors and those contracts will at least give me some insight into how the procurement process should work.
I appreciate that. I have one more question on that. Chairman, would there be another round?
Probably not. Keep going.
Thank you. Well, let me go there now. Well, you've answered that question, so let me move on to another issue that's very relevant. In fact, dealing with an email situation now. Conflict for our commissioners is not abnormal, and that is something that I get called upon to try to deal with a lot. And it is something that the OANC gets called on to deal with a lot. Do you have thoughts on how you will manage and navigate conflict between commissioners?
Well, I think there's 2 things in that area that should be done. Part of it goes back into standing up a course catalog of trainings and things like that that deal everything with perhaps best best practices for use of social media and email communications, right? Like the more training and opportunities we can have, again, can't force anyone to take it, or maybe you can, make some of it required. Hopefully that will get in front of some of the conflict before it occurs, just by anticipating some of the communication styles that can cause conflict. I think oftentimes conflict occurs when two well-meaning people don't recognize that each other are fighting for the best thing. It's just that they don't see that the communication style, sometimes it's so forward, you don't recognize that someone's trying to be helpful. But that said, when conflict occurs, I would like to see some role for OANC being mediator. I know, for instance, when you go to ABRA and there's a challenge to a settlement agreement, they have a mediation where the parties sit down and try to work it out. I don't know why OANC can't do something similar to try to work it out. If we would have to explore routes for independent mediators, maybe that's an option. But I think that we have to have some kind of mediation. I don't think that it's a good use of your time if you are the first, or you or any council member, if you become the first place people go for conflict resolution. I think we've failed, right? I think OANC has a responsibility there. I haven't fully figured out how that would be structured, but I'm pretty confident that it does belong there as at least the first cut. OANC should be unbiased. We should be fair. We should be stepping up programs and services, much like perhaps an unofficial HR department when it comes to conflict resolution. And
I appreciate it.
That's where I would like to go.
That'll be a challenge for you. I don't get involved, and I know that frustrates some commissioners, but I remind them that they are elected officials, like I'm elected officials and elected officials, and we oversee the office of the ANC, but not ANCs. Commissioners are duly elected, but I do recognize the need for assistance there, and so I continue to look for ways to assist there, but it will have to be through the OANC. Two last things I just want to touch on briefly. One is outreach and communication between OANC and commissioners. I've been frustrated that the council has funded programs and resources that commissioners don't know about and keep asking for. Do you have any thoughts going into the role on how we improve communication between OANC and commissioners?
Oh, absolutely. We tend to rely on email these days, and I know OANC tends to rely on email. I've seen the emails come out, but one of the things I've been thinking of, and one thing I really have liked this last year is the stepping up of a newsletter every so often. I think there's a lot more we could do with that. But I also think that when it comes to communication, one thing that OANC is going to need to do is it needs to adapt to communicate in the various styles that the commissioners communicate in, right? I know that OANC has a Twitter account. It's pretty much moribund. It hasn't been used in a very long time. I think that needs to be ramped up. I'm really not happy with OANC's website. I mean, we talk about how other commissions don't have great websites and some commissions don't have websites at all. Well, I think we could throw the OANC website into that as well. It's not fully functional. It doesn't have a place. I don't believe it has a place where you could sign up to get notifications from OANC. And if it did, I'm not sure that content is being fed to it. So yeah, I think that there's a lot of things that we need to start exploring with push technology to make sure that it goes out to people who are eager to get updates. But I also think OANC needs to be proactive. In addition to trying to look at technological solutions to make sure that everyone gets to know, there's no reason why we shouldn't be making the circuit to talk to commissioners at their meetings to periodically inform them of things that they're not taking advantage of. Like before you go to an ANC meeting, you could say, well, these are the 5 new things that we've done this last year. Is ANC like 2B? Are they participating in any of them? Well, then let's go to their meeting and tell them about it. Is 8A, where are they as far as a website? Oh, well, they had expressed some interest. Let's go talk to them and see what help they need. There's some monitoring that we need to do. And lastly, I think maybe this isn't this, maybe this wouldn't be sustainable just to the level of staff to do it every month. But I think maybe 4 times a year, there's no reason why we can't get out in the community at least and just have like a pop-up at a farmer's market and you know, 1 in Ward 7 and 8, if there's a great place, maybe 1, 5, and 6. But, you know, we can't just sit in the Wilson building, and we can't just be there during the day. We have to, you know, we have to be awake and serving the community whenever they need our help. So
I appreciate that. Let me pause there. Actually, we'll stop there rather. And again, thank you, Mr. Bates, for being with us today, for answering questions. And again, thank you, Chairman, to you and your team for hosting this hearing.
Thank you, Councilmember White. I don't have any other questions. Did you have any more, Councilmember?
No, I'm good.
Okay. If there's anything that you think of after this hearing, Mr. Bates, that you want to supplement, please feel free to do so. As I indicated before, the record will be open till 5 p.m. on October 24th. And with that, I think I'm going to end this hearing. I want to thank you for your interest and willingness to serve. I want to thank Councilmember White for all of the work that you've done with regard to getting us to this point. With that, the time is 4:16 p.m.